Richard Francis Yeager, commonly referred to as Dick, was a Confederate guerrilla who fought alongside William Quantrill during the Civil War. He gained notoriety for his involvement in a bold raid near Council Grove, Kansas, on May 4, 1863, as well as his participation in Quantrill's infamous raid on Lawrence, Kansas, on August 21, 1863. On March 28, 1839, James Barnes Yeager and Mary Jane Berry Yeager welcomed Richard into the world. His father held a seat in the state legislature for 2 years and served as the presiding judge of the Jackson County, Missouri, court in 1840. Additionally, he owned a freighting business operating between Missouri and New Mexico along the Santa Fe Trail. During the early stages of the Civil War, Dick was overseeing one of his father's wagon trains. When he returned home, he discovered that Charles Jennison's Redlegs, a Union guerrilla unit from Kansas, had ransacked his father's farm, taking everything they could carry, and had temporarily detained Judge Barnes Yeager. Dick promptly resigned from the freighting business and enlisted with Quantrill's raiders to fight for the Confederate cause. During the border wars, Yeager gained national notoriety as a ruthless figure terrorizing towns in Kansas. He led attacks on Shawnee and Blackjack and took part in the infamous Lawrence Massacre. At just 25 years old, Dick had already established a fearsome reputation. Under the Partisan Ranger Act, William Quantrill and his Confederate guerrillas honed military strategies, orchestrated coordinated assaults, and employed planned routes and horse relays. They ambushed Union patrols and supply convoys, intercepted mail, and sometimes raided towns along the Kansas-Missouri border. Yeager quickly rose to lead a band of guerrillas, occasionally referred to as the Hayes Gang. In late October 1861, Yeager, along with 13 others, including Cole Younger, launched their first raid into Kansas. They stormed the town of Gardner in Johnson County, Kansas, wielding double-barreled shotguns. Although their attempt to rob a store was unsuccessful, fortunately, no injuries were reported. Illustrating the violent nature of the guerrilla warfare in Missouri, Quantrill directed a significant portion of his operations towards pro-Union civilians, alongside targeting Jayhawkers, Missouri State Militia, and Union soldiers, mainly through ambushes and raids. Yeager's name appeared on a muster roll that included 92 names of William Quantrill's followers. After the Battle of Pleasant Hill, Missouri on July 11, 1862, Union troops found this muster roll on one of the dead Missouri partisan rangers. On May 4, 1863, Dick Yeager and his group of 23 guerrillas set up camp on land belonging to General George Armstrong Custer in the Council Grove vicinity. Their intention was to raid the town, but they discovered that the townspeople had armed themselves and stationed guards each night, thwarting their plans. Nevertheless, they maintained control over the citizens for a while, employing intimidation tactics and hurling threats and insults. The following morning, Yeager and a companion rode into town, heading straight to the office of Dr. J.H. Bradford, a fellow Missourian who recognized Yeager from his days as a Santa Fe trail freighter. Upon entering, Yeager addressed the dentist. "Doctor, I reckon you know who I am, but I've got a tooth that's causing me agony, and if you can ease my pain, I'll be obliged. However, if any of your Unionist friends cause us trouble, we'll set this town ablaze before we depart, as that's our purpose here." Bradford extracted the troublesome tooth and provided Yeager with a bottle of pain-relieving laudanum. To the relief of Council Grove's residents, the town was spared from destruction. His group rode westward to Diamond Springs, Kansas, and on May 5, 1863, they launched an attack on the stage station. The raid resulted in the death of Augustus Howell, the station manager, and serious injury to his wife, Sarah. The outlaws then set fire to the station before fleeing eastward. They lingered in the area for another day or two before returning to Missouri. En route, they killed a Union soldier at the Rock Springs stage station and robbed a stagecoach near Blackjack. Following the attack, the Diamond Springs stage station was never reconstructed and was relocated to 6 Mile Creek, named for its distance from Diamond Springs. Despite this, the spring remained a crucial water source and a popular camping spot for as long as the Santa Fe Trail remained active in the region. During that summer, Union authorities were focused on locating and eliminating Yeager after mistakenly believing he had led a raid into east-central Kansas in early May 1863 with a small group of Kansas exile guerrillas. It seems Yeager utilized his pre-war experience as a freighter in Kansas to assist in guiding the guerrilla raid, although he was not its leader. Federal officials had inaccurate intelligence regarding the true leadership of various guerrilla bands in west-central Missouri. It's possible that William Quantrill drew inspiration from this May raid for his more infamous Lawrence Massacre in August 1863. The Confederate government, which had granted Quantrill a field commission under the Partisan Ranger Act, was incensed and withdrew support for such irregular forces. By 1864, Quantrill had lost control of the group, leading to its fragmentation into smaller factions. By the autumn of 1863, Union soldiers were vigilant, effectively covering the eastern border of Kansas, resulting in a significant decrease in Confederate guerrilla raids. In June 1864, Union soldiers reported that Dick Yeager had been killed near the border of Jackson and Lafayette counties. The news quickly spread, but it turned out to be false. George Todd's Confederate guerrillas ambushed 1st Cavalry Federal forces in Saline County, Missouri on July 20, 1864. During the raid, Yeager sustained a serious head wound. 2 doctors examined his injuries and concluded that they were severe and likely fatal, with his brains protruding from 2 places. Despite his grave condition, George Todd transported him in an ambulance to a location approximately 7 miles from Miami, Missouri. Yeager was taken to a safe house belonging to the Flannery family, who had been displaced from the region near New Franklin, Missouri, due to General Order No. 11. Despite receiving attentive care, Yeager succumbed to his injuries on August 1, 1864. In Kansas City, Missouri's Forest Hill Cemetery, he was buried. The Union soldiers didn't realize their mistake until a few days later. In early August 1864, newspapers reported the news of his death in Arrow Rock, but the headlines amusingly declared, "Dick Yeager killed again." Jenny Flannery, who had cared for Yeager, testified about her involvement and was subsequently sent to prison. Following the Civil War, Lawrence, heavily marked by the conflict, established Kansas University. The Jayhawker, symbolizing the men who fought for free state principles, was selected as their mascot, ensuring that their sacrifices would be remembered forever.